I was really a failure. Like really, 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 really a failure. Like I dropped out of college to make music, but then I stopped making music. I mean, like really like just, like not even an epic failure, just sort of like a sad, pathetic failure. Just like kind of a real epic failure you could get behind. Like I tried this big thing and it failed and I lost everything. No, I just kind of like frittered my years away doing nothing and being in dead-end relationships and dead-end bands and stuff. And I didn't take responsibility for much. I kind of just like felt bad for myself and wondered why my life wasn't better and stuff like that. And then when I was about 26, I just realized that, wow, my life is not at all going the way I wanted it to go. Like, this is not what I expected. I was always the youngest guy. Like when I was like 16, I was in a band where everybody else was in their 20s, and I was like the songwriter and the singer, played guitar, and I was always like the kid. And then suddenly I was like 26 and I wasn't doing anything. And I was like, that just seemed like a little too old to be doing nothing. And you know, not long after, like David Foster Wallace put out the book Infinite Jest, and it really just it really depressed me. Because I was like, if I start right now, he's older than me, but if I started right now, I wouldn't get it done in time to be done with something, write something like that by the time I was his age and have it come out. It's not possible. So, I don't know, I was pretty disappointed with myself, and I kind of just went to therapy, basically, with an amazing person and I was just like, I'm not good at my life. I'm just bad at it, and I don't care what it is. I don't care what you tell me. Like I just want to not do this anymore. I just need to do something else. And I started just being, like, realizing how I was lazy, but lazy never felt right when I heard that. When I said that to myself, I was like, you're lazy. It wasn't that I was lazy, I was just really afraid. I was really afraid of failing. All my life I'd been precocious, and like I was like, you know, I was supposed to be smart and I was supposed to be creative. And I think hearing those things makes you scared that you're going to do something stupid or do something uninteresting, and no one will see you as smart or creative anymore. I've never been given any credit for being hardworking or being, you know, diligent or anything. And so all my credits were based in these like attributes that I had no control over. Like, oh, it was, you know, it's like being tall. Like, congratulations, you're tall. It's nothing you can even get excited about. So I realized that I'd kind of like been so afraid of failing and looking bad that I didn't do anything, that I just did nothing, you know, and I could claim some sort of safety in doing nothing. But then I decided, look, that's pathetic, and I need to work against all of my instincts and start doing things. So that's where, you know, I started a record company, built a new studio, and I started becoming aggressive and started like engaging culture, which was fun. I'd never like really engaged culture. I'd always been like if there was a bunch of people in New York City who like seemed cool, I would just like be sour grapes about it. I'd be very like, I don't want to go to that place, it's lame, all those, you know, those people, and they all think they're so cool. And I'd just be like really bitter. And I decided, look, why don't I just go and see if the 10% of those people are fun, just like every other 10, you know, like 10% of every group of people are pretty all right, you know. 90% of most groups of people are kind of terrible, but like 10%. So I started going to different types of things and meeting different people, and like started throwing parties, and all of a sudden I was kind of cool, which you know, I'd never been in New York. I've just always been like a total, not even an outsider, just like sort of a nobody, like just sort of invisible, like sad and kind of shy. And all of a sudden I was DJing, and I felt cool, and I threw parties. And then one night I went to go see a band, and somebody else was kind of playing the records that I was playing. And like nobody else was playing the records I was playing. That was like my thing. And I got really mad, and I got really defensive, and I was just like, what the, you know, that's mine. Who the hell is this? Some 22-year-old. And I got really embarrassed by being like, these aren't your records. You didn't write them. You just play them. You just own them. You can't be proud of yourself for owning them. But I was mad at the same time, because I was like, no, but I know that kid was at one of my parties and just doing, and it was like this really dense conflict that I couldn't resolve. And that's kind of where losing my edge came from. It like really just came from this, I didn't have a good answer. Like I was angry, but I was also really pathetic for being angry, but also kind of, there wasn't really a right or wrong. It was sort of like, you know, I was right and wrong, and this kid was right and wrong, and everybody there who was right and wrong, and it felt really dense and really like easy to write from, like easy to make something from. And so I made that song, and everybody thought it was terrible. I remember playing it for people, and they would be like, they'd give you this face, like, you know, like kind of like they don't want to say anything, and then ask you about like technical things, like, oh, what are the drums? And you're like, okay, you don't like this. And only Phil Mossman, who was the original LCD guitar player, was the only person who was like, I love this. And he was older than me. I think it had something to do with age. He was just like, I really love this. This is really funny. And so we put it out, and with literally the people from the label, like my two partners, Tim and John, were just like, they afterwards said, like, we just thought you were making a big mistake and you were gonna look like an idiot, and we just kind of felt bad for you. Like, you know, it was the B-side until the last day. It was the B-side to Beat Connection until the last minute, and I was like, no, that should be the A-side. That's the one that I should sink or swim with, you know.
But that was a Foster Wallace moment, really. And it had so huge impact, and still has.
Well, for, you know, that's a funny thing, because I know how many we made, and it's not that many, you know, it's like 4,000, 5,000, 12 inches, which to me was a huge deal. But then when I was like, well, it kind of like, it was a song that everybody knew when I was flying around. This is also when I learned about how much people got music from the internet. I was like, how did everybody know this thing? It's like, we've only sold, you know, 4,000 copies of it. And that's to stores, like, let alone, you know, clearly some of them haven't gone home with people. Excuse me. And, but then I started meeting people. That's when I started making friends and meeting people that were other musicians. And it was just like kind of the story, partially the story of their lives too. Like I met the Optimo guys from Glasgow very early on. And they were just like, yeah, it just kind of felt like, you know, this is our lives, kind of this sad, you know, like wondering what to do with yourself kind of period of time. I don't know, and then I had a job. It was the first time I'd made music my whole life, but it was the first time I made music that was like, where I wasn't trying to be another thing that I thought I'm supposed to be. That I was just trying to actually be as much myself as I possibly could. Like the first time I'd ever done that. And I was actually rewarded for it, which was remarkable. Like actually people were liking it. And so that was a big change to me. And I've become like, and since then, like I've become a really intense proponent of my friends. Like I'm really, now it's been so long, and I'm really hardworking, and I'm effective, and I make, you know, good decisions, and I'm very like, you know, I'm reliable. And so a lot of people that only know me now like have this vision of me as being very like, very on top of things, like, you know, which is like, I was the worst disaster. So when I'm trying to like I'm like, you guys, you just make something, don't worry about it, just make it, like stop overthinking it, like just make it and put it out. And they're like, well, you can do that. I'm like, no, you have no idea. Like I spent my entire 20s, like you are now younger. Like I'm talking to some 27-year-old who thinks that I know what I'm talking, you know, like it's easy for me. And I was like, when I was your age, I was still 5 years from putting out Losing My Edge. Like I was 5 years still of complete and abject failure to go. So you're doing great, like you're actually doing fine.